Think of space as a peaceful frontier, but low Earth orbit has secretly become the ultimate high ground for the military. With the rise of mega-constellations like Starlink and the development of satellite-killer missiles by Russia and China, superpowers are preparing for a war that starts in space. If the satellites go down, modern militaries instantly go blind. But it's not just the military that goes blind. It's you. It's the global economy. It's the very fabric of modern civilization. We are living in an era where the most critical infrastructure humanity has ever built is floating 300 miles above our heads, completely exposed, traveling at 17,000 miles per hour. This is no longer science fiction. Behind closed doors, in classified Pentagon briefings and secretive Chinese aerospace facilities, a new arms race has already begun. The era of the Starlink war is here. And whoever controls the skies controls the fate of the Earth below. For over half a century, space was treated as a sanctuary. During the height of the Cold War, when the United States and the Soviet Union were pointing thousands of nuclear warheads at each other, they managed to agree on one thing: space should be off-limits for weapons of mass destruction. In 1967, the world signed the Outer Space Treaty. It was a gentleman's agreement. It declared that the moon, the planets, and the void of space belong to all mankind. It specifically banned placing nuclear weapons in orbit. For decades, this treaty held the line. Space was for science, it was for communication, it was for astronauts doing zero-gravity backflips on the International Space Station. But while the politicians were smiling for the cameras, the military strategists were doing the math. Slowly, quietly, humanity became addicted to space. Take the Global Positioning System, or GPS. Originally a U.S. military project, it was opened to civilian use in the 1980s. Today, it is the invisible heartbeat of the global economy. When you order an Uber, you use GPS. When a cargo ship navigates the Suez Canal, it uses GPS, but it goes so much deeper than maps. GPS satellites beam down hyper-accurate timing signals down to the nanosecond. The entire global financial system, the SWIFT banking network, Wall Street high-frequency trading algorithms, they all rely on this space-based clock to timestamp trillions of dollars in transactions every single day. Power grids use it to synchronize electricity flow. Cell phone towers use it to route your calls. If you turned off the GPS satellites right now, within 48 hours, global supply chains would freeze. Financial markets would collapse. Food distribution would halt. It would be a dark age brought on by the flick of a switch. And the militaries of the world? They know this. A modern military cannot fight without space. Drones are piloted via satellite links. Precision-guided missiles use satellite coordinates to find their targets. Early warning systems stare down from orbit, waiting for the heat bloom of an enemy launch. Space is no longer just a place for science. It is the central nervous system of global power. And in the eyes of America's adversaries, that central nervous system is a massive, glaring vulnerability. The sanctuary of space officially died on January 11, 2007. On that day, the Chinese military launched an SC-19 ballistic missile from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center. It wasn't aimed at a terrestrial target. It screamed upward into the thermosphere, targeting an old, defunct Chinese weather satellite named FENGYUN-1C. Traveling at a closing speed of nearly 18,000 miles per hour, the missile slammed into the satellite. The impact was catastrophic. It didn't just destroy the satellite. It vaporized it into a cloud of over 3,000 trackable pieces of hypervelocity shrapnel. The world watched in stunned silence. China had just successfully tested a direct ascent anti-satellite weapon, or ASAT. The message to the United States was crystal clear. Your billion-dollar military satellites are sitting ducks. We can reach them. We can kill them. The United States was horrified. For decades, the U.S. strategy relied on exquisite satellites. These were massive, bus-sized machines that cost billions of dollars to build and launch. They were technological marvels, but they were few in number. If a war broke out, China or Russia wouldn't need to defeat the U.S. Navy or the U.S. Air Force. They just needed to shoot down a dozen of these giant satellites, and the American military machine would instantly become deaf, dumb, and blind. And the threat wasn't just kinetic. It was electronic. Russia began investing heavily in electronic warfare. They built massive, ground-based jamming stations designed to drown out satellite signals. They developed spoofing technology, sending fake GPS coordinates to confuse enemy ships and drones. They even launched secretive inspector satellites, mysterious Russian spacecraft that would slowly creep up next to classified American spy satellites in orbit, lingering just miles away, testing the waters of orbital espionage. Then, in November 2021, Russia did the exact same thing China did. They launched a PL-19 Noodle missile and obliterated their own Cosmos 1408 satellite. The resulting debris cloud was so massive and unpredictable that the astronauts aboard the International Space Station were forced to shelter in their escape capsules, bracing for a potentially fatal impact. The gray zone warfare of the deep ocean had officially moved to the stars. The U.S. military realized they had a critical problem. Their billion-dollar satellites were too fragile, too expensive, and too easy to kill. They needed a new strategy. They needed a network so vast, so redundant that it couldn't be destroyed by missiles. They needed Elon Musk. Enter the era of the mega-constellation. While the military was panicking about their vulnerable giant satellites, a commercial company was completely rewriting the rules of orbital physics. SpaceX wasn't building buses. They were building swarms. By mass-producing thousands of small, cheap satellites and launching them on reusable rockets, SpaceX created Starlink, a mesh network of internet connectivity blanketing the globe. At first, it was just billed as a way to get fast internet to rural areas. But when the conflict in Ukraine erupted in 2022, the true military potential of Starlink was unveiled to the world. When traditional communications infrastructure was bombed into rubble, Starlink kept the Ukrainian military online. Russian forces tried everything to take it down. They used their most advanced electronic warfare jammers. They launched cyber attacks. But Starlink adapted. Because the system relies on thousands of moving nodes, if you jam one satellite, the dish on the ground simply connects to another one seamlessly. It was a hydra. Cut off one head and 3 more take its place. The Pentagon was watching, and they were mesmerized. This was the exact solution to the anti-satellite missile threat. You can't shoot down Starlink with missiles. Even if China launched every ASAT weapon in its arsenal, they could only destroy a fraction of the network, and SpaceX could launch replacements the very next week. The economics of space warfare had been completely flipped. And this brings us to the biggest secret of the new space race: Starshield. Starshield is the militarized, classified sibling of Starlink. Operating under secretive contracts with the U.S. Space Force and the National Reconnaissance Office, Starshield takes the redundant, unkillable mesh network of Starlink and weaponizes it. Instead of just beaming internet, these satellites are designed for Earth observation, encrypted military communications, and missile tracking. They can talk to each other using advanced space lasers, creating an unbreakable, secure web of data moving at the speed of light in a vacuum. For the first time in history, a private commercial entity has become the foundational pillar of national defense. But China is not sitting idly by. Beijing realizes that whoever controls low Earth orbit controls the future. If the U.S. dominates the mega-constellations, China is locked out. So they have initiated their own state-sponsored countermeasure, Project Guowang, a massive state-funded plan to launch 13,000 of their own broadband satellites to rival Starlink. They are rushing to claim orbital slots, realizing that low Earth orbit is like real estate. There is only so much room. And right now, it is a gold rush to fill the sky with metal. The superpowers are building their invisible fortresses in the stars. But what happens when these fortresses collide? The true terror of the militarization of space is not just who wins the war. It's what happens to the battlefield afterward. Welcome to the Kessler Syndrome. Named after NASA scientist Donald Kessler, this is the ultimate doomsday scenario for modern civilization. Low Earth orbit is moving incredibly fast. A fleck of paint traveling at 17,500 miles per hour has the kinetic energy of a 500-pound safe dropped from a skyscraper. If a major conflict breaks out between the US, China, and Russia, and they begin targeting each other's mega-constellations, the resulting debris will not just disappear. It stays in orbit. That debris hits other satellites, creating more debris. It becomes a runaway chain reaction, an unstoppable cascade of destruction. Within a matter of days or weeks, Low Earth orbit could become a completely impassable field of hypervelocity shrapnel. If the Kessler Syndrome is triggered, the consequences are permanent. We wouldn't just lose the internet or military communications, we would lose the ability to go to space entirely. The debris field would act as an impenetrable cage around our planet. Space exploration? Over. The International Space Station? Evacuated or destroyed. Global weather forecasting, which saves millions of lives from hurricanes and typhoons, gone. The global financial system? Frozen. A war in space wouldn't end with a victor planting a flag. It would end with humanity locking itself inside a prison of its own making, regressing our technological progress by half a century, trapped under a sky of lethal, flying garbage. This is why the stakes have never been higher. The weapons being designed today aren't just threats to nations. They are threats to the entire future of the human species. When you look up at the night sky, you are no longer just looking at stars. You are looking at the most contested, high-stakes, geopolitical battleground in human history. Space is no longer an empty void. It is a nervous system made of silicon, glass, and radio waves. It is the invisible shield that protects our economies, our militaries, and our way of life. The transition from a peaceful sanctuary to a militarized zone happened silently while the world was looking down at their phones. But the alarm bells are ringing now. Mega-constellations, ASAT missiles, and laser communications are the dreadnoughts and fighter jets of the 21st century. The next world war will not start with the sound of artillery. It will start in absolute silence, 300 miles above your head. And when the satellites fall, the darkness will be permanent. If you want to understand how this space technology is directly linked to the massive robotic armies being built on Earth right now, click the video on your screen to watch our deep dive into the AI drone swarm revolution. And if you want to stay ahead of the forces shaping our world, make sure you subscribe.